Imagine looking at a corporate blueprint and, well, realizing you might need to eliminate up to 100,000 jobs just to survive.
Yeah, that is not a typo.
No, it's really not. We were talking about like 50,000 new theoretical layoffs being floated.
Right, and that's on top of massive reductions that have already been agreed upon across the board.
It's just a staggering number for you to wrap your head around.
I mean, it's the size of a small city, just entirely wiped from a payroll.
Exactly. And it's happening at Volkswagen. But for you listening right now, we really need to completely reframe how you look at this.
Yeah, because it's very easy to misunderstand.
Right. This isn't just a simple story of some greedy corporation arbitrarily cutting jobs to pump up a stock price. And it's certainly not just a, traditional German labor dispute.
No, those traditional narratives completely miss the actual scale of the crisis here. What we are witnessing is a fundamental unraveling of an industrial model.
A massive real-time test of whether Europe's largest automaker can essentially shrink itself without destroying the very engineering foundation that made it great in the first place.
Exactly.
So our mission today is to figure out how a company that's generating 322 billion euros in revenue is suddenly, fighting for its structural life.
Yeah, and what this reveals to you about the hidden, often pretty brutal complexities of modern global business.
Okay, let's unpack this because that revenue figure is just wild.
It is, but the revenue figure you just mentioned is actually the central illusion here.
How so?
Well, you see 322 billion euros projected for 2025, right? Moving roughly 9 million vehicles globally.
Yeah.
From the outside, the empire looks completely unshakable.
I mean, with that kind of prop-line cash flow, it sounds like they literally have a license to print money.
You'd think so,
Yeah.
but the actual operating profit tells a completely different story. It fell to 8.9 billion euros.
Wait, 8.9 billion off of 322 billion?
Yeah, which leaves them with a profit margin of only 2.8%.
2.8%. Wow. So for every 100 euros they take in, they are keeping less than 3.
Exactly.
That is an incredibly fragile tightrope to walk for a heavy manufacturer. Like one supply chain hiccup or a sudden spike in energy costs.
And it wipes out that entire margin.
Yeah.
Just gone.
But surely management is trying to fix this, right?
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
But even management's attempts to course correct, they haven't solved the core issue. Like in the first quarter of 2026, they managed to cut overhead costs by almost 1 billion euros.
Okay, 1 billion euros is a lot.
It is, but the margin only bumped up to 3.3%.
Jeez.
Yeah. The structural reality is that the company is roughly 20% more expensive to run than its comparable competitors.
Wow. And, the immediate public reaction to something like that is usually to just point fingers at headcount.
Right. People assume that if you just cut the workforce, you fix the margin.
Right.
But that fundamentally misunderstands the mechanism of the crisis. The problem isn't just that there are too many employees. The problem is the tasks assigned to those employees.
So the work itself is the issue.
Yeah, the cost disadvantage is basically baked into the very architecture of the company. We are looking at duplicated engineering efforts across distinct departments.
Oh, wow.
Overlapping brands that actually cannibalize each other. Fragmented software programs requiring endless, distinct updates, and just an overwhelming variation in the products themselves.
Well, I want to push back on that idea of complexity being a negative.
Okay, sure.
Because if I make more versions of a car, different trims, distinct engines, regional variations, shouldn't I reach more customers?
In theory, yeah.
Right, isn't giving the consumer exactly what they want the entire point of a global brand?
Well, yeah, in theory, giving the consumer endless choice drives sales. But in practice, every single one of those variations requires a massive hidden infrastructure.
Like what?
Like a unique trim level needs dedicated tooling on the factory floor.
Right.
Demands separate crash testing, unique software validation protocols, different spare parts inventories that you have to track for a decade. Bespoke marketing campaigns, distinct regulatory approvals across dozens of countries.
So it's kind of like earning a massive top-tier salary,
Yeah.
but finding yourself completely broke at the end of the month because you have 100 invisible overlapping subscriptions you forgot you signed up for.
That is a perfect way to put it.
All these tiny variations are just bleeding the accounts dry behind the scenes.
Yeah, there is actually a brilliant line that captures this perfectly. It says, this kind of industrial complexity behaves exactly like interest on a debt that nobody remembers taking out.
Interest on a debt that nobody remembers taking out.
Right.
That's so good.
Right. So, removing employees might lower your wage bill today, But if you don't remove the complex system that demanded those employees in the first place.
You haven't actually solved the underlying equation.
Exactly.
But, those 100 invisible subscriptions, they aren't just lines of code on a balance sheet. They take up physical space.
They absolutely do.
Every custom bumper or bespoke engine trim demands dedicated tooling and floor space, which leads us to the massive concrete structures that are dragging down these profit margins.
The factories themselves.
Right.
And the economics of automotive manufacturing plants are incredibly unforgiving.
Yeah.
I mean, they require a relentless, massive volume of production just to break even.
Yeah, and Volkswagen's production system was originally built to handle roughly 12 million vehicles a year.
Yep.
But today, they are only moving about 9 million.
Which is a huge drop.
It is. That leaves a massive echoing gap in their physical footprint. Suddenly, iconic plants like Emden, Hanover,
Right.
Zwickau, and Audi's Neckarsulm site, they've become symbols of this crisis. The company isn't explicitly stating these factories are closing tomorrow, but they are admitting that these plants lack a convincing economic role as we head into the 2030s.
And that phrasing, lacking a convincing economic role, is arguably much more terrifying for a workforce than a simple closure announcement.
Really? Why is that?
Because it means the physical capability is sitting right there, but the economic rationale to actually keep the lights on has completely vanished.
Well, let me ask a question on behalf of everyone listening.
Sure.
If you have a factory sitting there and you are worried about it being underutilized, why not just heavily discount the cars? Like, slash the prices, get consumers buying, keep the assembly lines moving, and keep the factories busy.
What's fascinating here is that basic retail logic completely breaks down in heavy manufacturing.
It does.
A factory designed to build 300,000 cars does not suddenly become cheap to run just because you decide to only build 200,000.
So the fixed costs just don't care about your production volume?
Exactly. The sprawling buildings, the advanced robotics, the massive maintenance crews, the industrial energy grids, all those bills are due regardless of output.
Right. They don't scale down.
No. So when you have missing volume, the underlying cost of every single vehicle you do manage to produce skyrockets. Discounting cars might keep the physical lines moving and make the factory look busy, but it actively worsens the margin problem. You are essentially paying people to take the cars off your hands.
That is wild.
It is. It forces leadership to ask a far more existential question. What should these factories actually manufacture now?
Right. And maintaining a footprint of that magnitude requires a constant, massive influx of buyers. If the system was built for 12 million, where did all the customers go?
Yeah, well, the answer is China.
China.
China is the absolute epicenter of this reckoning.
Because historically, the massive profits from Volkswagen's Chinese joint ventures functioned as this geyser of cash that subsidized their broad European network, right?
Exactly. Funded everything from mass-market hatchbacks to high-end luxury development.
But in the second quarter, their deliveries in China dropped by over a third.
Over a third. Because the Chinese consumer evolved and local Chinese manufacturers just moved exponentially faster.
Yeah.
Domestic makers are beating legacy automakers with blistering fast model cycles, significantly lower prices, and vehicles designed from the ground up around digital connectivity.
Rather than just horsepower.
Exactly.
So to survive in their most profitable market, a legacy German industrial champion now has to rely on Chinese technology, Chinese development speeds, and domestic partnerships.
Right. They are actively shifting to an in China, for China strategy.
Wow.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it reveals the collapse of the entire legacy global business model. Volkswagen is currently trapped in what we can call the global trilemma.
The global trilemma.
Yeah, they're attempting to satisfy three completely distinct, inherently contradictory systems.
Let's break that trilemma down for the listener. So system one is China, demanding hyper-local technology and blistering rapid development speeds.
Right. And system two is Europe. The home turf is demanding a massive pivot to affordable electric vehicles, while simultaneously exerting immense political pressure to save domestic factory jobs and maintain high wages.
Right, which is incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
And then system three is the United States.
Exactly.
The U.S. is increasingly demanding that production be physically located inside North America to avoid brutal import tariffs, which places specific, severe pressure on imported premium brands like Porsche and Audi.
And this just shatters the old definition of global scale. I mean, for decades, legacy automotive profit was fundamentally based on amortizing research and development.
Right.
You spend 2 billion euros engineering one brilliant vehicle platform, and you make that money back by selling 5 million identical versions of it around the entire world.
Let's build it once, sell it everywhere.
Exactly. But today, geopolitical fragmentation means scale forces you to pay for 3 separate supply chains, 3 distinct regulatory strategies, and 3 completely isolated investment pools.
So your research and development costs basically triple, but your sales volume stays flat.
Exactly.
Well, faced with 3 completely isolated markets, a nimble software startup would just immediately restructure, right?
Oh, absolutely.
They would tear down the old organization, kill underperforming divisions, and pivot overnight. Why is a global titan seemingly paralyzed?
Because the structural and human friction inside a legacy industrial giant is just immense. Restructuring Volkswagen isn't just about changing direction. It is like trying to rewrite a computer's fundamental operating system while the user is still actively typing on the keyboard.
Wow.
Every single keystroke requires a labor union negotiation.
Right, because half of Volkswagen's supervisory board actually represents the employees.
Exactly.
And the German state of Lower Saxony holds major voting and board influence through a system of co-determination.
Right.
So political goals, like protecting local jobs during an election year, directly clash with financial goals, like cutting costs.
Yeah. A single veto from a worker representative or a local politician can stall a factory transition for months.
That's crazy.
Every structural decision requires agonizing consensus building with labor unions, local governments, and traditional shareholders. Management often prefers relying on early retirements, voluntary departures, and natural attrition.
Which is nice in theory.
Right? While that is considered responsible industrial policy, it is dangerously slow.
Yeah.
I mean, in the time it takes Volkswagen to navigate its boardrooms and negotiate one layer of structural approval, competitors in Asia can design, test, and launch an entirely new vehicle into the market.
Yeah, that speed difference is brutal. But we need to bring this back to the real-world impact for you, the listener, because even if you have never driven one of these cars, you need to understand the ripple effects.
Absolutely.
This isn't just an abstract spreadsheet in a boardroom. When a plant of this size contracts, the local bakery across the street loses half its daily customers.
Yeah.
Municipalities lose massive chunks of their tax revenue overnight. Vocational apprenticeship programs suddenly have no demand for young workers?
And the broader industrial ecosystem takes a devastating hit, too. Consider the Tier 1 and Tier 2 component suppliers.
Right.
Many of these smaller companies are already taking on massive debt to survive the brutal shift from manufacturing exhaust systems and transmissions to building battery components and thermal management systems.
Oh, man. So they're already stretched thin.
Very. If an automaker suddenly cuts their orders by 20%, those suppliers don't just lose revenue, they face immediate insolvency.
And the damage even bleeds into the financial sector, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Because Volkswagen operates a massive financial services arm dealing with loans and leases. If the value of used electric vehicles drops faster than expected, or if they are forced to slash prices on new cars, they are suddenly carrying a mountain of financial risk.
Right.
A car sold today is essentially a financial forecast of what that piece of metal and battery will be worth 5 years from now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is why anyone analyzing this situation needs to look far beyond that 50,000 layoff number.
Right. The headline number is really just a distraction.
It is. The true health of this restructuring will be measured in the operating margins, the factory utilization rates, and the product development speed.
That makes sense.
Because the real danger here isn't a sudden, dramatic bankruptcy. The company simply has too much liquidity, too much technology, and too many valuable brands for a sudden collapse.
So what is the real danger then?
The nightmare scenario is a slow, agonizing erosion. It's a reality where management cuts the people on the factory floor but keeps all the bloated bureaucratic decision layers intact. They cancel car models, but they don't actually shorten the time it takes to develop the ones that are left.
So they just shrink into a smaller company, but an equally complicated one.
Exactly. Which locks them into an endless cycle of future cuts. The ultimate test of their survival is singular. Success depends entirely on whether they can remove complexity faster than they remove capability.
Subscribe to the Unlayered Global now, because this channel does not just explain the headline. It reveals the hidden system underneath it.
As we look at this massive unwinding of an industrial giant, it leaves us with one incredibly vital question to ponder. If the future requires companies to build completely separate technology stacks, entirely distinct supply chains, and isolated factories for China, Europe, and the US, At what point does a global brand stop being a single company and just become three completely different companies hiding behind the exact same logo on the hood?